There are children who were given away as brides at the age of only 3 years old. Are you aware of such an incomprehensible reality? Marriage should be a happy event, but what if that marriage is just the beginning of a nightmare? Let's think together about child marriage, which is still not going away in Africa. Hello everyone, my name is Kanta. Are you familiar with the issue of child marriage? Child marriage is sometimes called marriage too young. Being forced to marry while still a child is called child marriage and is generally defined as marriage under the age of 18. Child marriage, one of the most problematic, is forced marriage without the person's consent. And in most cases, the person's will is not taken into consideration. The partner is chosen based on the parents' circumstances and discussions, and the couple is forced to marry when they are still in elementary or junior high school. In May 2023, the United Nations Children's Fund, commonly known as UNICEF, released its latest report on child marriage. According to that report, an estimated 640 million girls worldwide were married under the age of 18, or child marriage. It noted that this translates to 12 million girls being married under the age of 18 each year. An estimated 640 million girls worldwide are in child marriage, with the highest percentage in South Asia. South Asia is home to 45% of the world's child married girls. The number of child marriages is concentrated in South Asia because India is home to 1.4 billion people. The recent news that India has surpassed China to become the most populous country in the world also made headlines. Although child marriage is proportionally concentrated in South Asia because of India's large population, child marriage has actually been declining worldwide, especially in South Asia, as a result of improvements in child marriage, especially in India, over the past few decades. The latest report also shows that the percentage of girls in child marriages has decreased from 21% to 19% compared to 5 years ago. However, while child marriage is on the decline worldwide, there are some regions that are bucking the global trend, meaning that child marriage is actually on the rise. A region where child marriage is rather increasing is Africa. In particular, sub-Saharan Africa has seen a rapid increase in population in recent years, and it is believed that child marriage of girls is increasing, going against the global trend. It is even said that at this rate, it will take a whopping 200 years or more before child marriage is eradicated. Let us look at an actual case of child marriage in the African country of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country located in the northeastern part of the African continent. Ethiopia is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, and the capital city of Addis Ababa, in particular, is attracting attention around the world as a new investment destination with its high-rise buildings. On the other hand, Ethiopia, with its diverse ethnic population, still has many poor people who live on a few cents a day. Among such poor people, child marriage has become a problem. When the woman in the photo, Yelenwork, was married, she was only 3 years old. She describes her experience at the time this way. "I used to run away and spend the night in the forest sometimes because I didn't understand what was going on. My husband would beat me because he said it was dangerous. My family would always return me to him, but finally, after 2 years, we got a divorce." She was married at 3 and divorced at 5. When you only hear this story, you honestly can't keep up with understanding. There is no way that a girl who is only 3 years old can understand the concept of marriage. The parents of this girl were forced to marry her off to a 22 years old man. Why parents force their own daughters to marry will be explained in more detail later. The story we have just presented is just the tip of the child marriage iceberg. In sub-Saharan Africa, there are an estimated 150 million children under the age of 18 who are married. The country with the highest rate of child marriage is Niger, also the poorest country in the world, where a whopping 76% of girls experience child marriage. Although the name Niger is little known, the country ranks 189th out of 189 countries in an index called the Human Development Index, which analyzes the health, education, and income status of each country, making it truly the poorest country in the world. I plan to cover Niger, the world's poorest country, in another video, so if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Returning to child marriage in Africa, 25 years ago the rate of child marriage was 1 in 7, but today that rate is 1 in 3, so you can see that the problem of child marriage in Africa has worsened in recent years. For example, the Sustainable Development Goals, known as SDGs, set forth by the international community include the goal of zero child marriage by 2030, and in order to achieve this goal, child marriage must be reduced at a rate 20 times faster than it is now. To be honest, I must say that the achievement of the SDGs is in a rather difficult situation. The reason why is that the situation surrounding poverty in Africa has worsened in recent years. As will be explained in more detail later, a major reason why child marriage occurs is for economic reasons. In recent years, however, the epidemic of the COVID-19 and the economic turmoil associated with the Ukrainian crisis have plunged many people in Africa into poverty. As a result, the problem of child marriage is said to have become more serious. For example, A study by World Vision, an international aid organization, found that in several communities where it conducts aid work, the number of child marriages more than doubled from March 2020, when the COVID-19 epidemic began, to December 2020, compared to the same period in 2019. I would like everyone to think here, what do you think is the problem with marrying too young, meaning child marriage? Of course, it can be pointed out that marriage without the girl's consent is a violation of her human rights. But what kind of problems can arise afterwards if she marries at an early age? I will explain from 3 perspectives. The first problem is the loss of access to education. Once children marry, they may not have a normal childhood or lose the opportunity to go to school. Married children are busy with housework and childcare, limiting their opportunities to learn. Losing educational opportunities not only deprives people of future possibilities, but can also lead to a cycle of poverty and ignorance, as I will explain later. The second problem is that the cycle of poverty continues from generation to generation, from married children to their children. Child marriage can cause a cycle of poverty. When minor children marry and have children at an early age, they are more likely to become financially unstable and face poverty. Deprived of financial independence and work-related opportunities, young parents find it difficult to earn an adequate income. As a result, these children themselves face poverty and limited access to education and healthcare. This cycle of poverty affects the next generation and also prevents African societies as a whole from developing. The third problem is the physical burden of marriage and childbirth. The physical burden increases when a woman has sexual intercourse with her husband or gives birth when her body is still immature. Immature bodies cannot withstand pregnancy and childbirth, and the risk of complications is high. Have you ever heard of a disease called fistula? When a woman's birth takes a long time and the baby is not born easily, in other words, when a dystocia lasts for a long time, the birth canal is compressed by the unborn baby, and as a result, part of the birth canal becomes necrotic, opening a hole and connecting with the adjacent bladder and rectum. That is the disease called fistula. After childbirth, urine and feces leak from the vagina against their will. Young girls are still small and are more prone to dystocia and diseases such as fistula. In Japan, where I live, fistula is a disease that has already disappeared and is hardly known because of the medical environment. However, it remains a serious disease in Africa. For example, in Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world, it is estimated that more than 700 people get fistula each year. So why are such risky child marriages taking place? Let us look at the causes. The first commonly considered factor is cultural and social. In areas where child marriage is rooted in long-established customs, the social pressure of "my parents and friends around me are also married at a very young age" is a contributing factor to the occurrence of child marriage. Moreover, there is a structural factor behind this, a lack of education about marriage, pregnancy, and childbirth, and a failure to recognize the problems with long-standing practices. However, if the only cause of child marriage is cultural, it should decrease with each passing era. Nevertheless, child marriage has not disappeared in Africa. In fact, it is on the rise. One of the major causes of child marriage is economic causes. Many of the African countries where child marriage is occurring are poor, and the majority of the people living there are destitute, unable to afford even basic food, clothing, and shelter. For example, the country of Niger, which has the world's most serious rate of child marriage at 76%, is also the poorest country in the world, as explained earlier. Many of the poor living in Africa are extremely poor, and many of these poor people are subsistence farmers and herders. In normal times, even if they have no money, they can survive by eating the crops they grow and the livestock they raise. In a year when the crops and livestock are not good due to bad weather, such as a drought for example, the lives of the poor become difficult at a stroke. In recent years, climate change has increased the risk of drought in some parts of Africa, which is a matter of life and death for the poor. The area of Africa most affected by climate change is the Sahel, a semi-arid region that stretches along the southern edge of the Sahara Desert. Such areas are sometimes referred to as a hotspot for climate change, and Niger is included in the Sahel. Money is needed to buy food and other necessities. It also costs money for education to send children to school. But people who are usually economically poor have little or no savings. This is because in such areas, the banking system does not even exist. For example, when a drought makes it almost impossible to harvest crops, their lives suddenly become difficult, and the whole family is on the brink of life or death. Therefore, according to the parents' decision, young daughters who are not able to be laborers in agriculture or pastoralism are married off to wealthy families, and in return, the family gets money and goods from the other family. In other words, young girls are being trafficked and are the last resort in the fight against poverty. The Sahel region, which I mentioned briefly earlier, or the semi-arid area that stretches along the southern edge of the Sahara Desert, is a region that I am personally very aware of the problems it faces. Especially in the past few years, the effects of climate change have been most apparent, and it has become a hotbed of poverty and terrorism. various approaches are needed to eliminate child marriage. In areas where child marriage has taken root as an ancient practice, it is necessary to change the mindset of the population, and moreover, to ensure that the laws on marriage and children's rights are fully functional. However, as I have explained, economic factors play a major role in the background of child marriage. Therefore, ensuring that girls continue to attend school and receive an education, as well as enabling them to become economically independent through vocational training and other means, will help to reduce child marriage. On the other hand, unless the problem of poverty itself, which is at the root of the problem, is also solved, young girls may become targets of human trafficking when society becomes unstable and life becomes difficult. And the background of poverty problems in the poorest countries, such as Niger, is largely related to the effects of climate change, such as the inability to harvest crops due to unseasonable weather, such as drought. From our perspective, the issue of child marriage may appear to be simply a continuation of a bad custom, but in fact there are complex factors involved in its background. We will be explaining the fistula and other social issues that came up in this issue in a separate video soon, so if you are interested, please subscribe to my channel and wait for it. Kanta's channel explains various issues in the world that are difficult to learn about through other channels. It is important not to be interested, but to stay interested. Please subscribe to my channel to stay interested. Thank you again for watching this video to the end. See you again in the next video.